What's important to Mike is that people realize that there's a lot more to coffee than what we might think about. And so I think if we listen to his talk he's about to give, we're all going to have a little bit more of appreciation for the art and the science that goes into coffee, from roasting it to preparing it to serving it. So please welcome Mike Zhu.
Good evening. So I'm here to talk about third wave coffee. 75% of Americans currently drink coffee on a regular basis, but unfortunately, most of it really isn't that good. But there's a movement that's happening currently that's changing this. So what is third wave coffee, that you might ask? It's about producing exceptional quality coffee with an artisanal effort, where roasting is about bringing out, rather than incinerating, the flavor characteristics of the coffee. Where coffee is sourced from farms, individual farms and co-ops, rather than from entire countries where everything's just blended together. Where you get taste that is pure and clean and complex. Kind of like fine wine and microbrew beer that I'm sure you guys are aware of. So the first two waves, the first wave was the introduction of Nestle, Folgers, Maxwell House to the kind of the general American public, what got us drinking coffee. Second was the introduction of milk and espresso drinks to the masses. Kind of Starbucks was kind of responsible for that. But when the focus becomes no longer about producing quality rather than volume and profit, this is the result that you get. That's 3 locations within 700 feet. It's a little bit, I think maybe a little bit excessive there. They're the biggest chains, that's kind of why I picked on them. Unfortunately, there's an elitist association for people who drink finely crafted coffee, but there's a real difference here. We're not necessarily talking about the sugary dessert-like drinks, but we're talking about a form of coffee that is pure, with very little added to it. High-end coffee is so good, yet so cheap right now, it should easily cost 3 times or more than what most cafes are charging for it. So, for example, let's say you love steak and you eat it every single night, given the budget. And the steak on the left is something that you can get at any diner place, and it might go for $10, $12. Then on the steak over here is maybe one of the best cuts in the world, and it's coming from the best steak restaurant in the country. What if I told you that was only $20? Okay? So is that worth it? Now would you go out and pay $15 to go to one of the thousands of standard, steak restaurants that's out there? Which one provides the best value? So a little overpaying for just a name or brand, as you can see. As I said, one of the best culinary deals out there is the third wave coffee movement. So when someone says elitist, I think of the doctor or lawyer complaining about 25 cents or $1 or $2 more for their cup of coffee, where the barista who's highly trained is paying a little bit more than minimum wage. I think the bankers are the elitist. So part of the problem is the image coffee has in the media. The coverage is very rudimentary, very elementary, and they miss a lot of important things. But in contrast, there are a lot of amateurs and professionals that are having very, very advanced conversations and taking it to another level. In the media, when they talk about coffee, they often just talk about the roaster or the farm where the coffee comes from, but they forget one important part, and that's the barista, the person making the coffee. You wouldn't talk about a 5-star restaurant without mentioning the chef or the importance of the chef, right? It's like just talking about the produce. So a third wave barista is someone who puts a lot of passion, a lot of artistry, and a lot of creativity into what they do. They're always trying to perfect it or make it better. So something like latte art that you've seen is an example. There are some serious competitions out there that's very similar to Iron Chef or Top Chef that competes worldwide. Another thing that people don't talk about is the freshness of coffee, that it's not a shelf-stable product. Bulk coffee that's usually purchased in the stores are months and months old, if not longer. So an expiration date is usually what you'll find on a bag at one of the grocery stores, but you hardly ever see a roast date. And as a rule of thumb, if a bag of coffee does not have a roast date, don't buy it because it's not fresh. So as you can kind of see on this chart, as soon as the coffee is roasted, essential aromas start leaving and then the stale aromas start coming. So much of what you taste is by smell. If that leaves, then what are you tasting, right? Now, if you store it properly, you can extend this a little bit longer, but not by much, just a couple weeks. Dark roast coffee does not mean stronger or more flavorful. Coffee is like steak. So most chefs will recommend to cook steak medium rare to medium, right, for the best flavor. But a lot of people drink their coffee as a well-done steak, and it's burnt and it's flavorless often. So let's talk about some coffee etiquette that might be helpful. When you go to, let's say, an independent cafe, please take the time to read the menu. And try not to order a caramel macchiato when it's not on the menu, okay? So that's like going to Burger King and saying, can I have a Big Mac? And they look at you and say, no, we don't have that. And then you'd be surprised. Happens a lot. So speaking of reading, there's no X in espresso. Speaking of espresso drinkers, one etiquette you might do is try not to order your double espresso in a to-go cup. I think if you don't have 2 minutes to drink a 2-ounce espresso, your life is probably more complex than this guy. A cafe is a business after all, and not a public library. Try to be a patron. If you visit one, if you're using the Wi-Fi or meeting somebody there, buy something. Even if you're not a coffee drinker, there's something on the menu that you can purchase. Speaking of supporting cafes, some people don't think about tipping baristas, but it's really no different. Their role is no different than a bartender. So help these guys out. It's not a super high-paying job, so it really makes a difference to them. So this next lady's probably not going to get a tip. But baristas do get a bad reputation for not being friendly or pretentious, and I've experienced that. I've been to lots of different cafes, and sometimes the customer service is awful, but it should not be like that. Absolutely not at all. We should expect great customer service, just like this picture. And if you're not getting great service, tell management, okay? So I encourage you tonight to try some of the coffee that we're brewing. I encourage you to search and ask friends that are coffee drinkers, ask them about good coffee, and go out and find those third wave coffee shops. They're around here. We have great roasters around this area. And thank you very much. We'll be down there brewing lots of coffee for you guys. Thank you. And we have AJ and Jesse who helped me put the slides together. Big thanks for them. And they're going to be helping me brew coffee. So if you have any questions,